I am a guard in a hidden prison located in the Arctic. Something is horrifying about the inmates. Over the years as a guard at Supermax Prison, I've seen almost everything you can imagine. Escape attempts, stabbings, and riots. These are only some of the more unpleasant occurrences I have dealt with in the past, but after the horrifying discovery I just made, I don't think I'll ever come out of here alive. It all started when the warden called me into his office on Monday. During the entire walk there down the hallways, I thought of the trouble I could be in. "Shut the door," he said as he looked up at me from his desk after I entered. Those words sealed it in my mind. How much hot water I was in for some sort of infraction I was not aware of yet. I nodded and sealed the entranceway. He demanded I take a seat, so I did. "You're the best officer here," he said. I waited for the but. I anticipated news of termination. I saw a forced transfer to some mundane position filing paperwork headed my way. "I want to give you an opportunity," he said. "You will make $600,000 in 1 year. Your benefits will remain unchanged. You would have less oversight than what is present for you now. You would be in a leadership position, albeit an isolated one." "That sounds ideal," I said as my mind swam in the possibilities of how much profit he offered. "There are only 2 things we ask of you. 1 is that you cannot tell anybody about your new position. 2 is you locate somewhere else. There's a prison in the Arctic, and that is where your life will be for the next 365 days. The confusion must have been readable on my face. "If your wife asks, tell her that you are going to a federal academy. There is no cell service or Wi-Fi there. Any contact you make with her must be through snail mail. We will handle the addresses given. If you decline this offer, then this conversation never happened. Do you understand?" I contemplated the pros and cons. Before I became law enforcement, I was a bodyguard. I was gone from the house for extended periods. Even though it would be time with the wife lost, the fortune would help both of us. I agreed. The prison facility was a large compound, not much bigger than the place I had patrolled before. A few things jumped out at me when I first laid eyes on the populace there. They all had wounds on their faces, and they spoke a strange, guttural language I was unfamiliar with. Why do they talk in such a bizarre tongue? I asked myself as I would walk down the blocks. The new warden I worked under had the last name of Buckley. He had noticeable scar tissue beneath his eyes. His attitude towards me at the beginning was hardly welcoming. If anything, he acted as though I was a burden. He seemed to resent me due to the mere possibility of having to train me on things. One evening, Buckley ordered me to do a cell extraction. Christopher Aluko was the name of the inmate we had to deal with. On the walk there, I asked my boss what Aluko had done to end up here. "I'm not allowed to tell you what these scumbags have accomplished to wind up here," Buckley said. "He started his career in crime by cannibalizing his sister, though. The doors of each cell were closer to that of an insane asylum than a prison. They were complete barriers that you could not see through. It was me and 3 other guards who were about to deal with this high-profile detainee. The supervisor was present, doing the thing the bosses generally do. That is to say, he remained on standby and did not get his hands dirty. Upon walking in, the first thing I saw was Aluko sitting upright on his cot. I noticed he was huge, at least 6'8" and 320 pounds of pure muscle. "I'm going to need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back," I said. I kept my hand near the holster where my pepper spray was. "Show me respect and I'll show you the same," I continued. "You won't have handcuffs on you for long if you cooperate. You are not better than me," Aluko said. His voice had a baritone quality which I expected from a man of his size. What I did not was how weird it sounded. It was as though 4 or 5 people were chanting the words in unison. "All right," I said. "Let's get you moved to where you need to go. The faster we do this, the better off we'll be." We had to restrain his huge arms and place the metal bracelets on his wrists. He laughed all the while. Near the end of the shift, Buckley went into one of the sniper towers and smoked a cigarette. Since my duties for the day were complete, I took the spiral staircase to the level he stood on. When I saw him, I was only a few mere inches away from where he puffed. He did not seem to mind or even care about the footsteps behind him. He focused on the distant and lowering winter sun. I didn't know it yet, but something about Buckley was deeply wrong. "The caged animal back there said something which he shouldn't have," I said. "Part of the job is having thick skin," he said as he flicked his cigarette over the edge into the snow. He turned around to face me. "It's not about that," I said. "Did he hurt your poor little feelings?" He had an insight into my past that no one has, I said as a bitter taste filled my mouth. "Well, that's unfortunate. Means you lied to the oral board when you got into the position you're in now. You shouldn't lie to your employers." "I need to know what kind of prison this is," I said as I felt blood rush to my head. "Why does everyone have open sores all over their body and face? Are they exposed to some kind of virus, and if so, are we susceptible? Either that or they're always high on something. That would explain why they're always speaking gibberish. Also, how in the hell do they know things that I haven't even told the closest people in my life? Better to do the job assigned. Don't worry about things above your pay grade." Buckley pulled out another pack of cigarettes and lit one. "I hope we're not exposed to dangers we weren't warned about. I'll have to find a way to get the word out. If you break your non-disclosure agreement, it would be far worse than a termination. Your wife back home, the one with the dark curly hair and the nice curves, I'd hate to see the impact of your decisions on her." That was when I grabbed him by the lapels and shoved him to the ground. I considered throwing elbows. The idea of making him taste his blood was satisfying. I did not want to be incarcerated in this den of misery, though, of all places. Buckley started laughing. What he did next took me by complete surprise. He patted me on the back with his free hand instead of trying to defend himself or resist. "You've proven your point," he said as he pushed on my chest. "Now get off of me. I don't want to give the signal to one of my buddies in the next tower. He has a modded Remington 700 pointed at you." I released him. After he stood and brushed some frost off, he made eye contact with me. "I respect you for your bravery. Most people wouldn't be willing to do that to me, especially someone beneath me in rank. Tell you what, I'll shed a little bit of light on what kind of place this is for you, and if I ever find out you told anyone, you'll wish you would have died at birth." I felt the adrenaline start to wear off. As my energy lowered, I nodded, thereby giving tacit agreement to his new offer. I looked to my left and saw the sniper he was referring to. It occurred to me that if he wanted to take action against me, he could have had me executed right then and there. Buckley waved at me to follow him as we made our way down the steps. He escorted me through the yard. Ice encased the weight sets and pull-up bars. We followed the chain-link fence to another facility that had coded key access. After we put in the correct digits, he swung the door open. We made our way down a hallway that did not seem modern. There were lit torches on the walls. The flooring was pallid cobblestone. He brought me into another room which was the size of an auditorium. A man stood up. He wore all black clothing with a white collar, and it took me a while to recognize him as a priest. I saw rows of long tables, ones fit for a king in an ancient era. Crucifixes, rosaries, chalices of water, and stacks of dusty books lined every corner. I skimmed some of the titles and saw that a few were in a different language. "Father Lamora," Buckley said as he stared at the man of the cloth. "What are you doing down here?" The priest pointed to his left. When I shifted my eyes in that direction, I did not immediately notice the presence of a fourth person in the room. This one was one of the inmates tied down on a slab. As soon as we focused our collective attention on him, the man came to life. He started struggling against his restraints. A red-tinged substance poured from his mouth like foam from a rabid dog. "I have almost driven the evil entity out," the priest said. Buckley turned to me. "What is going on here?" I asked. I had the irresistible urge to run screaming in the other direction. I knew I could not take my chances out in the harshest cold, but a part of me was willing to at least try. As I stood there, frozen in terror and confusion, Father Lamora continued speaking, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "This place, my son, is a prison unlike any other," he said, his gaze locked onto the writhing, restrained inmate. "It holds not just the bodies of criminals, but also the darkness that consumes their souls. This entity you see before you, it's a malevolent force that has taken root in the hearts of the most depraved individuals." I couldn't tear my eyes away from the convulsing man on the slab. The red foam continued to pour from his mouth, staining the white cloth that covered his body. Buckley leaned in closer, his scarred eyes locked onto mine. "We're the keepers of this ancient evil, tasked with containing it at all costs. Our prison isn't meant to rehabilitate or punish. It exists solely to quarantine this malevolence." My mind reeled with disbelief. I had signed up for a well-paying job in a remote Arctic prison, but I had unwittingly become a guardian of something far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. The knowledge that my wife was miles away, unaware of the horrors I had stumbled upon, filled me with dread. Father Lamora began chanting in a language I couldn't comprehend, and the restrained inmate's struggles intensified. It was as if the very essence of evil was trying to escape from his body. Buckley's voice grew colder as he continued. "And now you're a part of this too, bound by the same secrecy that keeps this place hidden from the world. Remember, we can offer you wealth, but we can also ensure your utter destruction should you ever betray us." As I watched the scene unfold before me, I couldn't help but wonder how deep this conspiracy went. What had I gotten myself into? And how could I ever escape from a prison that held not only hardened criminals, but also the very embodiment of evil itself? The chilling realization struck me. I had exchanged one form of captivity for another, and there was no way out. The fate of my soul, and perhaps even the fate of humanity, now rested in the hands of those who guarded the darkness within these walls.